If you're here, that probably means you have questions about a certificate of trust, which probably means either you have a trust or you're thinking about getting a trust, and you're wondering what a certificate of trust or certification of trust is and when and how you might use it. Well, in today's video, we're going to answer that question. Hi, I'm attorney Chuck Roulet. I'm licensed to practice law in both Minnesota and the state of Florida. And we maintain offices and staff in both locations. In our Minnetonka office, we serve our clients and their families in the Twin Cities, as well as throughout the state of Minnesota. And in our Venice, Florida office, which is just south of Florida, we work with our clients and their families throughout the Gulf Coast in the state of Florida. So again, in today's video, we're going to talk about what a certificate of trust is and when and how you might use one. Now, to talk about how we'd use a certificate of trust, we first have to talk about what a trust is. And to understand what a trust is, we have to start with what would happen if something were to happen to you and you didn't have anything in place. So if something were to happen to you, absent something else, your family or anyone else for that matter is not going to have the legal authority to sign the paperwork that's required to transfer ownership of your assets. So if you think about it, if you own a home, for example, and you pass away, absent something else, no one's got the legal authority to sign the paperwork to sell your home. Absent something else, no one's going to have the legal authority to go to the bank and close checking and savings and deal with all of your financial accounts. So the way that somebody gets that legal authority is they go to court, and it's known as the probate process. So if you were to have nothing in place and your family had to go to the probate court, the court is then going to decide based on state law who the personal rep is and who inherits everything. So in other words, the court is going to decide based on state law who's in charge, where everything is going, and how it might get there. Now, pretty good chance that's probably not who you would want or how you would want things to happen, but that is the default process. And the other thing to know about with a probate proceeding is that whenever you go into court for a small fee, anyone can generally go and get copies of court records. So that means everything that's going on in that probate proceeding is potentially wide open to the public. So again, if you have nothing in place, it's going to be probate with the court making all of the decisions. Now, if you have a will, okay, probably the biggest misunderstanding I see in the general public about estate planning is they think, well, if I have a will, my family doesn't have to go through probate. And unfortunately, that's not true. Now, again, absent something else, if you were to just have a will in place, your family is still going to have to go through probate. So it's still that same process of going through the courts. Now, occasionally somebody will say, well, then, Chuck, what's the point of having a will? Well, you do pick up some significant advantages. First, you decide who the personal representative or the executor is because you nominate them in the will. Then you get to decide where all of your assets are going and any protections or restrictions you might want to place on receipt of those assets. Now, those are huge advantages over doing nothing and letting the court make those decisions based on state law. In fact, the way I explain a will to my clients is think of a will as a set of written instructions to the probate court. So again, if you have nothing in place, the probate court is going to make these decisions based on state law. If you do a will, they're generally going to follow the instructions in your will. Now, with that background, the way I explain a trust to my clients is I tell my clients, think of a treasure chest. I use the analogy of a treasure chest. If you were to sign a trust instrument, a treasure chest just magically appears. You then open up the lid of that treasure chest and you would change ownership or beneficiary designation on your assets to the trust, to the treasure chest. Once everything is in there, you close the lid. While you and or your spouse, if you're married, are alive, you're generally the trustees of the trust, meaning you are the ones that can open up the treasure chest, put things in, take things out. Depending on the type of the trust, if it's, for example, a revocable trust, you may have complete control over everything inside of the trust. Now, here's the key point. If you were to pass away or something happened to you, whoever you have designated as the successor trustee or trustees, you can have more than one, okay? They then get the keys to your treasure chest, can open it up and put things in or take things out pursuant to the instructions you've left for them in the trust instrument. So because you've created a legal mechanism ahead of time via the trust to transfer signature power over your assets to someone of your choosing, they don't have to go through the probate court to get that authority. So that's the way a trust works to avoid probate. So, important point, if you notice with the trust there, you have to what we call fund the trust, which is the process of changing ownership or updating beneficiary designations to the trust. So that means because that trust is a separate legal entity, third parties are going to have to interact with it probably while you are alive and then after you are passing. So for example, when you go and update either the ownership or beneficiary designation on a checking or savings account, the bank or the other financial institution is going to need some information about the trust. So rather than give them a complete copy of the trust agreement, this is where a certificate of trust comes in play, okay? I like to tell my clients, think of the certificate of trust as the Cliff Notes version of the trust, a 2 or 3 page document that gives third parties the information they need about the trust, the name of the trust, the date it was signed, who the current or successor trustees are. So all the information that a financial institution or third party would need about that trust is in the certificate of trust, and you can give them a copy of that rather than give them a copy of your trust agreement. So in other words, with a certificate of trust, no one outside of you, your trustee, maybe your immediate family should ever need a complete copy of your trust agreement. That's what the certificate of trust is for, and it helps to keep your affairs private. So hopefully this video has answered your questions about a certificate of trust. If you would like to learn more about how you can make it as easy and inexpensive as possible for your family to take care of your affairs if something were to happen to you, I'm actually going to be hosting a free online masterclass, and there's a link in the description below. And in there, we're going to talk about financial powers of attorney, living wills, healthcare directives, wills versus trusts, and which one might be the best one for you. We'll talk about estate tax minimization strategies. We'll even talk about some of the strategies you can incorporate in your plan that would protect the assets you leave for your children and your grandchildren. You can actually design your plan in a way that protects your kids in the event that they get divorced, have poor money management skills, get sued, something happens in the future. We'll be covering all of that in that free online masterclass, and there's a link in the description below. And if you'd like to learn how you can protect your home and life savings from long-term care and nursing home costs, use also link in the description below. You can check out my free guide, Save Our Home, How to Protect Your Home and Life Savings from Long-Term Care and Nursing Home Costs, or you can go to saveourhome.com. So again, check out the free online masterclass. We'll be talking about strategies and tactics for planning, and then you can get the free guide as well on how to protect your home and life savings from long-term care and nursing home costs. So I hope you found this video helpful and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Be well.